say that there's a number of things that have actually made this situation very interesting. The one is that example of to digitalize yourself, go online, create as many variations of what you need. Let me give you an example. If you start up something and you are, let's use a subscription model, you are charging 300 rands per month or whatever it is that people come in. And I'm talking about now an annuity subscription model as opposed to a retail purchase model, right? You then decide that, oh, you know what, a turnover of 300,000 per month would be useful for my business for whatever reasons. You would then say, well, out of this 300, I need, 1,000 subscribers to come on board. Well, that's the one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that you may have 10 varieties of different things that require 100 subscribers each, that still give you your 1,000 subscribers, that actually give you your 300,000 turnover. And it's as simple and as quick and as open as that. And that's the kind of thing that I found fascinating. Second thing, one of the interesting things about brands in the past is that brands dominated the play in terms of your commercial market, right? That was the big thing. The sentiment in which brands were able to market themselves above the line, TV, media, etc., and below the line, really created that path in which they tended to dominate any commercial framework in which they were living. If you think of big brands, you think of big brands, and you think of big advertising, you think of big this and big that. Well, I think the future is going to look a little different. I think the future, I'm not saying brands are not going to play a critical role, absolutely they will. But if you think about the proliferation of brands that are coming in, the sentiment towards those brands is lessening, but what's becoming more urgent is their ability for those brands to deliver what they require in terms of the needs that they're actually projecting that they need. There's an interesting one for all of you grown-ups. I think you could find a number of grown-ups here, who I'm sure you're all aware of the brand Bottles. Now, I don't know when Bottles came on board, but I was fascinated about the idea that I can have my drinks delivered to my door. Very quickly, when I looked at them, and this is pre-COVID, by the way, when I looked at them, I thought, wow, this is amazing. So now I can just quickly order on an app, and whatever I need, I don't have to see the inside of a bottle store again. But I'm not sure how old bottles are, but I probably guess they're not that old. Sweeps Out is another very interesting one that I know my wife uses, which is the one that actually helps us get people who can come in and help with the day-to-day activities of a home in terms of helpers. Now, the logistics of that in terms of them fulfilling a need is greater as to whether or not you have an affinity with the brand. You look at it and you say, do they fulfill a need? Do they fulfill it within a certain time? Is this a need that I require, etc.? And what you're beginning to find, particularly on the online capability, is that there is a lot of those that are existing, where people are looking at the fulfillment of a need. The big question is, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you fulfilling a need? Then the next question is, how are you fulfilling that need that's necessary? Now, waiters and waitresses are people who are probably not aware of the skills that they're developing and how those skills are so crucial for the future. The idea here is to make them conscious, deliberate, and precise about the skills that they're gaining and they're developing, so that they can pass those on not only just to others, but also transfer them into other careers that they're looking at. If you think about what a waiter does, they are having very strong in communication skills, conflict management, time management, money management, etc. If they could truly appreciate and grasp the strength of those skills, that's going to be very, very important. So if you look at the ability to deliver against some of the components that we've talked about with regards to minimizing brands, and for you to fulfill those needs, you're going to have to be strong on certain skills. And it is the skill fulfillment that you need to identify with yourself that's going to be able to, well, if I have this skill, I have a skill of cooking, and I have a passion of cooking. What is the need that I'm fulfilling, and how do I find that need? You find that need by asking yourself the question, why do I love cooking? Do I love cooking because I want to feed people? Do I love cooking because I have found this art of bringing flavors and blends of foods together that are amazing? Do I love cooking because there's a nutritional value that I think society is missing with regards to understanding what cooking can do? When you find that why, together with the passion, you have a skill. And that's the skill that then you take out to society and you're able to then deliver against and put an operating model that says, how can I live on this skill that I'm actually good at? Whether it's reading, whether it's playing the piano, being a musician, whether you're a personal trainer, whatever it is a skill. Find the why. Once you've got the why, bring the two together, put an operating model behind it, and that operating model will take you to your destiny. Is because when I walk around the mall, and most of us maybe don't quite pay attention to this, you will find in a mall lots of shops. Let's take that Mall of Africa as an example, right? A big mall, lots of shops. In there are loads of clothing shops. Right? One clothing shop guy didn't get up and go, oh shucks, Zara is there, or whoever's there, wherever there, maybe I shouldn't be there. There are lots of clothing shops in there, lots of food places, right? So the guy who wanted, takeaway place or sit down place or restaurant, people don't go, well, there's one there, so I maybe shouldn't go there. Okay. Why is that? The reason is because they are offering something very, very specific to a very, very specific clientele, to a very, very specific market. So if you look at the platform of YouTube, and when you start looking at it from a different set of eyes, you're going to ask yourself the question, how can 1.6 billion people be on there? And if you look at the number of people who are on there doing almost the same thing, right? There's lots of cooking people. My wife and I and daughter have discovered that there are lots of aerobics people. There are lots of people. Everybody's on there doing everything. Mm-hmm. And yet, each of them brings in a completely different, unique flavor. There are certain people that my wife wants to do aerobics with, that I don't want to do aerobics with, that my daughter doesn't want to do aerobics with. And the point I'm getting at is, firstly, I don't want you to worry about, is what I'm doing, taking it to where I'm taking it, not the right thing because of a variety of constructs. That's not where it should go. When you have what it is that you believe is truly something that you are good at, skill, that you're truly, truly good at, that's number one. The second thing is the why. The why will give you the niche in which you are trying to focus on, right? So when I talk about youth, it's a very wide, it's still a very wide subject matter. I have to narrow that youth down almost to a critical spot. And the way I did it is I took the entire youth market. I went into universities, I went into schools, I went into colleges, I went into whatever the case may be. And if I remember correctly, I think I came to, the 800,000 grade 12s, if I remember correctly, and universities, etc. Anyway, there was a whole thing, and I think I came to about 3 or 4 million target market. Okay. Then I said to myself, actually, of that 3 or 4 target market, my actual youth that I'm targeting me is 0.25% of that. Actually, it's 0.10%. That's the market I need to be going for. And then I said to myself, how do I reach that 0.1? Do you see what I mean? So sometimes the difficulty becomes not just in whether it is what I'm doing, it's the audience you're trying to reach. And how are you trying to reach that audience? And what are you doing to try and reach that audience? And how are you separating this audience from that audience to get into that very specific audience that you're looking for within that target market? And that's how the game is played in constructs with a wide platform with lots of people doing the same. Walking to a mall is going to be, malls are in my opinion, in very, very serious trouble. Very serious trouble. Unless they come up with a very quick construct, they're in trouble. The prediction is going to be that in 2040, 95% of all purchases will be online. Currently, at the present moment, 40% of GDP in China is purchased online. South Africa, we're still slow. We are 1.something%. The US in April went from 14% of GDP. And if you think of the GDP of the US, it's massive. They went from 14% to 27% just in the month of April. So yeah, brick and mortar constructs. If you're thinking long term, don't be going into a mall and looking for a shop. Footfall is not going to be as much. Think about it, how much people are now ordering takeaway online, etc., online, how restaurants have had to quickly think about, oh, I need to have a capability to deliver, etc. So the construct of brick and mortar, not saying that it'll go away altogether, kind of like the old story of the vinyl, that the CD was going to kill the vinyl and then iTunes was going to kill the CD. They all still exist and they're all still there, but certainly in minimal quantities versus the last time. You've got to know who your market is. You've got to go very, very specifically to your market. You've got to get to the point where your precision is so good that when people are opening up your request to attend to this, or here's a product that I'm selling or whatever, that you're hitting the target market very, very specifically. And you don't have the luxury of the history of big advertising on TV, which really didn't care, right? It'll give you an LSM and it'll give you a time, but you know, whether you liked it or not, you had to go watch the advert unless you paused, fast forwarded, or just walked away and made a cup of tea there. You don't have that luxury. When it comes to companies, this is a big one and it's an interesting one. You're going to have to take your time here, because companies have not necessarily started, they've cognitively thought about transferring themselves onto a digital platform and working together with those who are on digital platforms, but I don't think it's in their DNA. I know companies that have hit the Titanic, they've hit their Titanics that have hit an iceberg, and their number one priority is to get water out of the Titanic. And we're busy saying, if you know the story of the Titanic, guess what happens, right? It's a matter of time. So you're gonna have to take your time there. But going back just to your first point, which I think is a critical question, please get to understand, you can't spray and shoot in this age. Otherwise, you will be part of everybody who's just hoping for a result. You got to get more clinical than that. Firstly, companies are, by virtue of their nature, big old bureaucratic beasts. If you came to me and you sat down and you said, hey, Vic, I've got this idea, I'll go, wow, what a great idea. Hey, let's co-create it. Let's go and do it. Companies want you to do presentation, power slides, and explain your life history and where you come from and where you're going, right? So this is what you should actually look at. One, you got to have a background in terms of what need you're trying to fulfill. Two, you got to explain why you're trying to fulfill that need. Three, you've got to say, hey, if this need is not fulfilled, these are the challenges that may occur. And four, try and tie it back to something that they can relate to. So when I talk to you about online, I can talk to you about online till I'm blue in the face, but the moment I start saying, hey, think of online like walking into a Mall of Africa. You can walk through one door called the website, and then once you're in there, you can have lots of shops in the mall, right? So you've got to try and tie it back to what they can possibly understand. Because remember, your creative mind has conceptualized this, and from conceptualizing it, you've produced it, but they haven't been part of your journey. So you need to walk that journey with them. Again, find the right people to talk to, not anybody and everybody, right? And then go through that process very gently. Speak to one person in the business. What do you think? Try and get 2 or 3 people to what do you think, and then elevate yourself to the decision makers who once they've got the buy-in from these other guys, makes your job a lot easier. If you dive in there cold, human beings are brought onto this planet to be created. If from the moment you were conceptualized, ovary, sperm, you were brought onto this planet to create. That is your function. The function of creating is what should I be creating? The function of what you should be creating is what are you good at? The function of what are you good at is what am I passionate about? And on top of that, the function of what am I passionate about is your why, which is what am I purposed to do? Now, the difficulty of that in a competitive environment from the history of where we were was that it was constantly about competition, one on top of the other, who's best, who's better, who's winning, who's accumulating, who's got more. That world has now changed. What the digital online platform enables you to do is to sit literally in your home, think about those skills that I've talked about, translate them onto a platform at minimal cost, go out and use the digital technologies that are there today to market yourself. So ultimately, it's about you. It's not about the product, it's not about the brand, it's not about anything else. It's about you. It's about whether or not people have the belief, that you have the belief in what you do. So over this course of time, develop that belief, and develop it from the construct that you're not here to have the world write a story of you. You are here to write that story, so that when time comes and you move on to the next dimension, you will have fulfilled what you are purposed to do here. So utilize these platforms that are here, that no one else has to get into the way of, and no one else has to, you need to ask permission from, that they're actually at your disposal to get that momentum that you need.